Hello Bits and Bones, my name is Slady and welcome to my channel. Before we get into the video, I'd like to give an announcement, so today's is going to be a shout out to a fairly close writer friend that I met on Twitter called Gavin Gardner. He is all about horror, all kinds of horror, and we agree on what makes good and bad horror as far as I can tell. He wrote an analytical essay on the Blair Witch Project and its success over on his blog, which I will link in the comments below. I just really enjoyed reading it, and if you loved the Blair Witch, the original one, then you might want to check it out. It just gives you a fresh hit of nostalgia for what made it so great. So today I'm going to be reviewing Code Geass, Lelouch of the Rebellion. Another full-length anime review because I can't help myself. Code Geass was one of the first animes that I ever watched, and I will always love it. I rewatch it whenever I can and sucker new people into watching it with me. There are so many times throughout the anime, and literally, usually when nothing's even happening, I get chills for no reason because I'm thinking about all of the things that are going to happen, the characters that develop, and just how great it is. Because Code Geass has such a special place in my heart, it's hard to be unbiased, so I'll also bring up some points my boyfriend mentioned during his first watch through. Here's some information about Code Geass, the voice actors, and its rating. In case you have never heard of Code Geass, a simple description is that an outcast prince forced into hiding with his crippled sister determines to destroy the empire that abandoned him. He's a genius student passing the time, gambling with noblemen, when he finds himself in the middle of a military conflict and finally puts his plan to take down his corrupt nation into action after making a deal with an eternal witch who grants him the power of Geass. If it's not clear, I love Code Geass. I would recommend watching it. If you would rather watch it than get spoilers from the rest of my review, go right ahead. I'm not going to judge you for not watching my video. Now, Code Geass is well loved in the anime community, and any anime reviewer worth their salt has a video about it. In my humble opinion, when it came out in 2006, it was pretty revolutionary. It took plot and characters above standard feel-good expectations of shonen anime, which was mostly all we youngins had available. It was mature, while still appealing to the part of anime that are a bit ridiculous, which kept it bordering mental and emotional stimulation to keep preteens invested. It keeps a special place in a lot of our hearts, but since its release, it's much harder to defend it as the best anime there is, which is definitely how I used to feel, but a lot has come out since. Now, Code Geass has a lot going on. By the end of the show, you're in many ways completely disconnected from where you started, and there's no way I can address everything that happens. So first, some words of praise, why I love Code Geass so much, and then some criticism I didn't have for it until this watch through, now that I've matured and consumed more content. For starters, Code Geass doesn't have shitty useless characters. You know the ones I'm talking about. When animes have side characters that come on screen, say and do nothing conducive to further the plot and basically waste your time with cringe. Code Geass doesn't have them, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Even characters that eventually become inconsequential, like Rivel and Millie, they never show up on screen without some sort of purpose to contextualize the conflict outside of them. They become the common citizen, and when they show up on screen for a minute, it's not like Lord of the Rings when you just want Frodo to go die on Mount Doom already because he's so boring. On that note, even though I absolutely hate Nina because she's an obsessed simp, I have to commend Code Geass for taking a seemingly shy, useless girl that's Lelouch's classmate and elevating her to a position of power. As much as seeing her on screen annoys me because I don't like her as a person, doesn't mean she was a bad character, she was just someone I love to hate. It was so rare to find an anime without unnecessary female non-characters that Code Geass was especially refreshing in a time when Sakura from Naruto was standard for a strong female lead. If you want me to rant about Naruto someday, let me know in the comments below. Another high praise for Code Geass is its lack of filler. Some may look at the episodes and argue there's a couple distractions from Lelouch's vie for political power in the school event days, but I don't consider them filler. Even when the show takes an episode off from the main plot, it's a needed change of pace from all the heavy exposition and war. Not only that, but it's not like all the Beach Day episodes from other animes where everything happens and is non-canon and leads to nothing. Code Geass uses its funner episodes to develop and dig deeper into specific characters' personalities and relationships. Also, Code Geass has Gundams and is the only anime besides Gurren Lagann to date that I've been able to enjoy them. It's a unique blend of sci-fi elements in a soft magic system world. Giant fighting robots and weapons mixed with Geass powers that manipulate humans. I loved Code Geass because it had a balance of endearing relationships and gruesome reality. It's known for having some of the best and most heart-wrenching twists. The whole Euphemia thing got me so goddamn hooked. And even at the end, I found myself tearing up for Shirley. Code Geass is an anime that gets better on the second watch through because you've had time to know the characters, and when you meet them again, knowing how it ends, it's fucking sad in a lot of cases. I could go on and on about Code Geass, but I think I'll end its praise on saying that I found it to be a more palatable approach to larger political topics when I was a teenager. In its first season, it spends a lot of time exploring the aftermath of a country that has been forcefully colonized. Before Lelouch's goals expand to making deals with and taking over other countries, it's really fascinating seeing the backlash and varying stances of the people who are Japanese and those who aren't. The way the system oppresses them and takes away their identity by turning Japan into a numbered area stripped of its culture, and how, somehow, we don't align this with our own brutal real-world history. Now, on to some criticism. To start, the opening episode is a hot mess. They throw so much information at viewers, it's a deterrent for potential new fans. My boyfriend got whiplash and didn't want to continue watching the anime after the first episode out of fear it was going to continue at that pace. You're introduced to a dozen characters and aren't given any time to understand who they are before the conflict starts. Events just start happening and you don't know why. Who is the soldier that Lelouch runs into and just so happens to be his childhood best friend and gets immediately shot? Who is this woman that's been kidnapped by terrorists that Lelouch finds even though everyone else was told her container was full of toxic gas? It's hard to tell where the story is going because it starts going way too fast. Are we bothering to memorize Lelouch's school friends, or should we not bother because we're about to be whisked away somewhere else and never return? If you don't know what you're getting into, it's hard to prioritize the information you're being given. Not to mention the obvious criticism for Suzaku's introduction, that it's such a convenient anime thing for him to have been there at that perfect moment to kick everything off. If you had a hard time starting Game of Thrones, the TV show, because there were too many characters that you're immediately introduced to, then you will likely have the same trouble with Code Geass. It's a fuck-off big cast. Now, once you're settled into Code Geass, you know the characters and their goals. There are parts of the first season and its middle towards the end that get a bit boring. They are always introducing new, better technology, but the stakes don't feel like they're being raised. We don't care about the strategic standoff because all we really want to watch is the characters problem solve. The physicality of the fight becomes much less important than the strategic interactions, which lost me a bit as someone who isn't big into Gundams back when I first started watching Code Geass. In that sense, Code Geass could have cut out some of the fighting to add in more world building. If you watch reviews talk about Code Geass, the second season is always a polarizing topic. As much as we know of Lelouch's mother and how he loved her, we never get flashbacks of them together, or her with anyone else, really. She's a name, not a person. Then in the second season, characters start falling over themselves to announce their undying loyalty they had for her. It's a bit weird not knowing who a character is that shaped so many we actually know, and overly convenient when it just so happens to be time to start sealing up some questionable character motivations. While we're on it, as much as Code Geass Season 2 caters to a narrative parallel with the first season to re-establish what's happened since the time skip, a lot of people didn't like it. It felt like backpedaling. Who is this Rolo kid and why do we care? As much as Code Geass gets back into the flow of things, the start of Season 2 is a bit jarring. Not to mention the end conflicts feel rather rushed. Personally, I think Code Geass had a story it wanted to tell, but it did too good of a job at the start that our expectations got skewed. When Lelouch confronts the Emperor and they have an episode going over who Charles was and his motivations that led to the world we know, it feels like an afterthought because we didn't care half as much as Lelouch does. Thematically, they line everything up. Charles is the past, Schneisel is the present, and Lelouch is the future. But neither of those two as enemies feel like the enemy. We don't spend enough time with them, actually opposing them. When Lelouch starts his journey, tensions were high because the conflicts were small and close to his heart. When he takes on the bosses at the end, we're much more invested in Lelouch's friends and what happens to them than we are about the battles going on to decide the fate of the world. Schneisel literally nukes a capital city at the end of Season 2, killing tens of thousands of people, and it had none of the emotional impact or significance as Shirley's father being one of the 100 civilians killed in a landslide Lelouch caused in the middle of Season 1. As the scale of the conflict got bigger, the importance of it got lesser. I'm actually a little surprised that I have so much criticism for Code Geass, and it's really coming out. I love it to death, but boy was it not perfect like I used to think it was. My last and newest criticism for Code Geass is the revival of too many characters. It sets itself up as an anime that's willing to go there and kill its characters in tragic ways, but it undoes a lot of the deaths it doesn't need to in the end. Jeremiah and Nonnally are the only characters I accept making a reappearance after their presumed death because they are integral to the plot. But at the end of Code Geass, there are so many characters that die but also somehow don't die. Suzaku needs to live more than anyone, and I know fans wanted him and Colin to have their final showdown, but they showcase the end of their fight as him dying and they don't explain how he didn't, which just feels rushed and like poor writing. Cornelia gets shot down but somehow doesn't die, which is her second resurrection, even though we didn't need her in the second season at all, really. Her knight, Guilford, was supposed to have died valiantly trying to save her, is miraculously not dead too. It's like, why? These are not characters that we needed a happier ending for. Doesn't it make perfect thematic sense for Cornelia to die by the hands of her brother like Euphemia did? So, yeah. After all that said, it's hard to give Code Geass a rating. Once upon a time, I would have said it was an A+, but for the sake of fairness, I'll settle with an A- because it's still a cut above a lot of other anime, but for everything amazing that it did in Season 1, Season 2 highlighted a lot of flaws for me. If you watched Code Geass when it came out, have you watched it again? Has your opinion changed? Do you ever have that where you take a step back, look at something that you loved so much, and then just find so many things that you excused when you really shouldn't have? Because that's what it feels like is going on right now, and I don't know if it's just me. Let me know if you loved Code Geass, you hated Code Geass, you haven't watched Code Geass, go watch Code Geass. And if you enjoy my content, please like and subscribe to my channel. I try to release content at least once a week, but if you'd like to help increase my output of content, be that YouTube or writing, you can support me on Patreon. I'll link it in the description below. I'd also like to take the time to thank my current patrons on screen. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.